So Whistler acknowledges that we work, learn, and play on the shared unceded territory of the Squamish Nation and the Lil'wat Nation, and we honor their language, culture, and history. So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the frequently asked questions for the program, which will probably, and I'll elaborate on those a little bit, which will probably answer quite a few questions. And then what we're going to do is open things up to questions for either myself or John or both of us. And you can feel free to answer any questions. And we are recording today just in case anyone needs to take a peek at this after the fact. And we will be doing another session like this a little later in June as well. So I am going to start by going through the frequently asked questions. Okay, so at what stage should projects be in development? So the intention with the program is to kind of give producers in the Northern Territories and provinces a bit of a leg up in regards to putting their applications together. So what we're looking for is stuff that's in very early stage development. So like the treatment stage. So projects that haven't really moved along too far and are ready to kind of like dig into their application, but have enough of a sense of what the project is about that they can put an application together, and we're there to sort of help with the application itself. How long and detailed should the application materials be? So we're looking for early stage kind of materials. So if you have like a kind of a rough draft, or you don't even have a draft yet, that's basically what the program is really all about. We're going to go through each session in the program will literally be on one specific aspect or one piece of program material that needs to be applied with. So in other words, if you've got some sort of a rough draft of all those, that's great. But we're going to be there to kind of go over each one individually to help you put those together. So early stages. We don't accept any late applications to the program. And the deadline, just so that you know, is July 15th right at midnight Pacific Standard Time. And there's no exceptions to that. We can't really allow any late applications. There's an online sort of application process. So we can't really, we're not really looking for email applications. We're looking for you to submit through the online portal. If I am successful and get into the program, can I change my project partway through? No, basically we're looking to sort of train you as the producer in turn how to put an application together. And the idea would be if we switch everything right in the middle, that would be kind of counterproductive, because we're sort of getting you ready to be able to apply to the IPF program itself in the new year. So changing would be sort of counterproductive. In terms of evaluating the project, so we're not really putting together a jury. Basically, I'll be sort of looking through everything to see if it's complete and ready to go. And then I'll be discussing with my colleagues, John at the IPF, and then of course with the, we'll be in touch with the territorial film commissions to sort of talk with them as well and sort of see how everything's coming together. And then we'll make our decisions based on that. In terms of residency, it's really just specific to Nunavut, the Northwest Territories, and the Yukon. We're not taking any applicants from any other provinces or other parts of Canada. It's really focused on the North. And of course, you have to be a Canadian citizen, you have to be a permanent resident, you have to be over the age of 18. And then, like I said, residing full-time in either Nunavut, the Northwest Territories, or the Yukon. In terms of getting any kind of feedback, like if you've applied and you weren't selected, we're only giving feedback to the participants that make it into the program. We don't really have the resources to provide feedback for everyone who applies. Can you apply to the program with more than one producer attached? You can, but like you can have your team sort of partially made up or not yet completely made up, or maybe you've got a couple of producers, but there's really only going to be one person, the person who applies, that's going to go through the program. So it's basically just limited to one producer who's going to actually get the training. And then, you know, if you're ever been in another Whistler Film Festival program, that's fantastic. We encourage you to look at the other programs on the Whistler website, check them out, and to apply. And you can certainly have been in a Whistler program before if you want to apply to this program. That's not an issue whatsoever. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, that covers the frequently asked questions. John, maybe I think I'm going to skip over this a little bit. Maybe if you want to chat a little bit about the overall sort of intention of what we were hoping to accomplish with this program, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Good to see everyone. Some people I've met before, some names I recognize as well. We've seen with the Independent Production Fund applications from the North, a handful. We did a little bit of awareness to make sure producers in the North were aware of our development program. So if you're not familiar, the deadline's in March so that we're clear. Brendon's talking about applications for the program. When I start talking about applications, it's for the IPF program, which is the outcome of this training program. So hopefully it's not confusing for me to talk about a March deadline, which is our program, not the training program. It's our actual development program. So when we launched this program in 2020, and we give up to a maximum of $30,000 to develop your funding, to develop your project. That's spent on writing, paying yourself to write, hiring writers, completing your budget, et cetera, et cetera. All that info is on our website. What we recognized, and this is a first for the IPF, is that the Northern Territories would really benefit from additional training pre-application. So the rest of Canada really are on their own to figure out how to have a competitive application when they come to us. What we want with this program, in partnership with the territorial governments and the Nunavut Film Development Corporation, is to help make applications out of the Northern Territories more competitive. We're highly competitive. We had 218 eligible applications this year, and we funded 33. So that's kind of 12 to 15% success ratio. You have to really get into our top 30 projects to be getting our money. We're an equity investor, so our board really just sees it as very binary. It's the best projects. There's no separate lanes for anything. What we wanted to do with this program was to help producers out of the North have that competitive application. And we could see some of the pieces that this isn't the challenges that regional producers face, and we can see it in the applications, are not unique to the North, but this program is specifically for the North. So we can see other challenges in the prairies and sometimes in the Maritimes where it's mandatory to apply to us with a mentor. Some people just check a box and they kind of bring in a friend. That's one major difference. A really strong application will really have a heavy hitter, let's say, in that mentorship position. That takes time. Those connections need to be made. They need to know you and who their project is. Part of this program is going to help to connect that dot. That's just one example. So we also favor uniqueness in our creative. So we're hoping that we receive these really interesting, unique applications out of the North. This program is going to help frame that in a way that makes the creative materials you apply to us with 3-page creative and a 1-page vision document will put you in a position to be competitive against all comers across Canada. So our goal, the simple intent is, we would like to send some development money to the North. We want to see some producer projects capture our money. It's happened a handful of times in the past. We'd like to increase the success rate. We won't be doing it with separate lanes in our actual deadline, but what we can do is with this training program is help producers have more competitive applications. An important note, and I'll just close on this, is that as much as this program is being sponsored in part with the IPF, so we're a financial partner along with the governments of the North, The outcome, I think it's a really good fit. I think our program is a really good fit. I think capturing our $30,000 for development is a fantastic next step for some of these producers and for your projects. But it's not necessary. It's not exclusive. If you, at the end of this program, end up applying to Bell Fund in their slate program or go straight to production, that's an outcome I'm totally comfortable with. It's not a mandatory for you to come and apply. We think it's the best opportunity for you to come. It's a much more wide open playing field. We don't require a platform commitment. We really favor uniqueness, like I said, and we're just looking for stability around your planning and your team. This program should put you in a really good spot, but if you choose to apply somewhere else, the skills you've learned in this training program about making a quality and competitive application will totally apply to other funds. So hopefully it goes beyond the IPF. The skills you learn here should be valuable in years going forward for the IPF and for other funds you may apply to. That's all I had to say. I'm also sticking around for questions, so you can ask us anything, and I'll give it back to you, Brendon, for now.
Thanks, John. Yeah, that's a really good point, I think, in regards to just the overall aspect of being able to put an application together for just about any funding body. Many of the materials that are requested in the IPF application, but not all, are transferable to other applications. So maybe it might help if I just quickly kind of go through what the sessions will cover, which, as I said before, follows specifically the application materials that you'll need to put together to apply to the IPF program. So we're going to kick off with like a quick sort of program overview session. Then we're going to get into what like applying for web series development applications are all about. We'll do a quick session on entertainment law, which is a specific to all the sort of the contracting and the legal like the materials that you're going to need in regards to any kind of legal requirements for the application. We're going to put together a session on the creative pitch deck. So that'll sort of talk about how you put a pitch deck together, materials that are copy, images, all that type of thing. We'll talk about vision documents. We'll do a session on that. We'll do a session on putting together a great biography and resume. We'll talk about development budgets and development schedules. That'll be a session. We'll do a session on sustainability planning. Sustainability plans are a big part of applications for a variety of different funders nowadays. So that's a good one to cover. We'll talk about how you work with a story editor and what you get out of that, and how you work with a production executive and what you get out of that as all. And then we'll wrap everything up by sort of taking all of those components and put them all into context so that you understand how it all kind of fits together. And by the end of that, you should have a really good comprehensive idea of how to put that application together. But like I said, a lot of it will be transferable to other development or production financing or program applications that you might have in for other funders or financiers. So at this point, what I'd like to do is open things up to questions. And I believe we had a original question that came in via the JOT form application that you filled out when signing up for the application. And that question was specific to, do you want to read it, Kenzie?
Sure. Yeah, that one was from Emily. They were just wondering strategies to approach a co-producing partner to make your IPF application stronger.
So I have a couple. So there's no black or white sort of answer for this, but I have a couple of suggestions that you might want to follow. If you are looking for a co-producer or a producing partner, my suggestion would be to start with your local sort of film co-op. That's a great place where you can connect with other people and you can find those people that maybe have a little more of the administrative bureaucratic kind of leanings, and you can look for a co-producer there. You might also want to check with your territorial rep at one of the film development agencies and sort of see if they have any suggestions. It's always good to introduce yourself to those people as it is and put your name on their radar. My big overall suggestion, though, and this is kind of an important one for the long term, the longevity of your project, is I really strongly recommend that if you are looking for a co-producer, you try to find someone that you've worked with before, as opposed to a complete stranger if you can help it. And that could be just something as simple as maybe a short form project, like a short film. Maybe you've worked on something regarding event planning. Maybe and I'm just talking about like just starting out kind of thing. And you do your due diligence on who your co-producer might be. And due diligence can be just basically talking to other filmmakers that have worked with that person and kind of see whether they'd be a good fit for you, because that's going to be a long term. That's not just sort of like a checking a box kind of thing so that you can apply for a funder. That's going to be your business partner, and you want to make sure that you have a good relationship with that person going forward. I can tell you from running previous programs, training programs, that sometimes newly put together teams that kind of rush into a relationship just to apply to a program, sometimes that doesn't always work out very well. And then it gets a little complicated, sort of unentangling or disentangling yourself from that relationship. So I strongly recommend that you do your due diligence when you're going to work with someone brand new that you haven't worked with before. And if you have someone in mind that you have worked with before and you're sort of on the fence, I can tell you that that's probably the best idea, because you've already forged a bit of a working relationship with them. So that would be my advice there. But let's move forward into some of the other questions. I see that Kelly has her hand up. So Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to ask around sort of the time commitment. You listed a long number of workshops, and I'm just curious, like, what is that actual time commitment for those of us who, you have your own businesses and everything, but making sure that you're slotting in sort of weekly repeated sessions is something just to be really cognizant of, and how that affects other projects.
Right, that's a great question. So each session is scheduled to run once a week. The session will probably be an hour to an hour and a half in length. That would include the presentation part and then sort of some discussion and Q&A afterwards. So what we hope to do would be, once we make the final selection, I'll do a little poll to kind of see what time of the week is the best for people. Try to take their schedules into account, of course, and work with people. And then we'll set a specific day so that it's like one day consistently per week, so you can work around that, as opposed to everything kind of jumping around and you're sort of like, oh, this week's on a Thursday, that week's on a Tuesday, what's going on? We'll sort of set a date based on trying to accommodate people's schedules as best as possible. Most likely, I can tell you that the sessions will be during the day as opposed to in the evening. And that's out of respect for the speakers that we're going to be bringing in, the experts that we're going to be bringing in, just based on their schedules, which would be more accommodating for them during the day. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah, no, that definitely answers the question. And then just as a quick follow-up, because I'll let other people, but I mean, in terms of the folks that you have coming in to make presentations, just as a note, as someone who's participated in something like this in the past, just being cognizant that they're aware of some of the realities of Northern producers, so that it's something that we're getting good information that helps us within our own context. And that's something that, sometimes it gets forgotten in the translation, is that we have a bit of a different structure up here in the territories. And so, yeah, whoever you're bringing in is just aware that this is not LA.
That's a really good point. You're absolutely right. It's a little ways away from Los Angeles. That's true. And of course, we're going to be juggling time zones, right? From across the entire north of Canada. So there'll definitely be some things to take into account. And I will be sort of prepping the speakers so that they understand that they are going to be working up north, even if they are at home, online. So that's definitely a really great point, and it will be taken into account for sure.
Brendon, it's probably would you say that this time is probably the time? Because you landed on this time for the Q&A because that was a good fit for all the time zones, I think, on paper. So you have limited options. It's going to be right around this window, likely. And I think it's such a great question. Thank you, Kelly. It looks like once a week for 12 weeks, starting in September, right? Is that right, Brendon?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. There's a question in the chat there. I think it's very similar. Is there a structured schedule or time commitment? So is there a time commitment outside of what we just talked about, the 60-ish minutes every week for 12 weeks?
Right. So I wanted to follow up with that. Good point. Thanks, John. So there is homework that we're required to do. And of course, that homework is essentially after each session, which again, sort of focuses on one specific aspect of the application materials. At that point, then you will be expected to work on that particular document that you'll need to apply with. And then you'll be sending it in. Myself and the experts perhaps will be reviewing that document, providing feedback until we get it to where it's shaped up into a great place that you feel and we feel comfortable that you can put that as part of your actual application. So there's always going to be a little bit of homework. Now, of course, you can manage your homework up on your own and sort of fit that in, but I don't really see the homework being too onerous in terms of time spent. You could probably even work on it on the weekend, right? Like if we were to do a session like today on a Thursday, you could certainly find some time on the weekend and work around your regular work schedule, et cetera, to get that done. So and then because really that's the thrust of the program, is to have all those materials. So that's essentially what the homework is. There's no hard and fast deadline. I'm not going to be saying like, I need this within a week. You'll have some time because we want to make sure that you get the best possible document prepared. So I'm not going to rush anyone. But of course, we're obviously working towards that March deadline for the IPF program overall. But I want to give you the time to work on it and kind of go back and forth with me and get the feedback so we can shape it up as best as it needs to be. So overall, I would say that the time commitment isn't too onerous. You know, you've got your about maximum maybe 90 minutes per week for the online session, and then to set some time aside in the evening or on the weekend to do your homework.
Then we
Cool.
also have another question in the chat. Does the topic need to be about the north of Canada?
No. That's my answer. Listen, we have the territorial governments here at the IPF. Uniqueness is whatever you decide it is. I know our industry as a whole is having a debate about what is CanCon, what's a Canadian story. You could break that down and say, what is a Northern story? We are not looking at this has to take place in any particular place or be focused on a particular thing. What's important to us is that you're based in the territories, and this story is your story, and you're the IP owner, and you're the leader telling it. But I don't need it to be about the North on the IPF side. I don't know if any of our territorial governments wanted to have a different opinion or expectation around this program, but for us, it won't matter. Let's take silence as agreement. Yep. We got some thumbs up. Yeah, that's good.
Kenzie,
Yeah,
do we have any other questions in the chat?
Oh, I think we just had one come in. For the creative project, does it have to be a mini series or a short or something like that?
I'll jump in on that. Yeah, it's the nuts and bolts. So I was just going to talk about eligibility, but when I described the IPF at the beginning, I should have said we are if you're planning on coming through this program and applying to the IPF is series only, no films. We fund series, scripted. So we actually don't do factual or doc. If your intent is to land in an application for our program, it's going to be a scripted series. So yeah, no factuals, no docs. And we have a rule that is less than 20 minutes per episode. Don't worry too much about that. Feel free to go right up to 20 minutes. The only reason we have this cap is so that no major TV show will come apply to us. We don't want this fund to become sort of finance completion on all the big half-hour TV shows, you know. The current way that we limit that is to just say 20 minutes or less, which means those big shows don't come to us. And it's a much more wide open playing field for you to apply. So those are the only limitations on the IPF side. It's a scripted series only. Any format, animation is eligible, kids is eligible. It can be an anthology. So each episode is its own unique story with different characters, etc., under a theme, kind of like you know, Black Mirror or Twilight Zone, etc. So all of that is eligible. In terms of genre, sometimes we get that question. Genre is up to you. We don't, you know, a lot of the top genres we see are comedy, horror, I think is past drama in the last few years. But anything's on the table. You can tell us, and we're definitely seeing some more genre blending type stuff as well. So that can sometimes work in your favor because it's unique and interesting. I'll pause there.
I don't think we have any other pre-submitted questions. Nothing else has come in the chat, but we can open it up if anyone wants to unmute themselves or raise their hand and ask a question. Do a last call.
I'll make one more comment just on eligibility. So when you're thinking of the idea that you're going to bring, as I said, we do favor uniqueness, and the technical definition for us is new and unique, meaning, and that new piece is relevant, meaning it's typically not something that was made before as a series. It can be based on a short film, it can be based on other works, etc. But when you come into this program, if your intent is to land and apply for our development money, to be eligible, you have to own those rights. And really, it shouldn't be something that's been made before. So if you did your own YouTube series, you want to ask us some questions. You're welcome to use this program to develop that material further. You definitely possibly will still be eligible for us, but we'd want to have a discussion about it. So if you have any questions around your rights, or if there's a previously developed work that you're thinking of applying to, we need to know what you did with it, how it was distributed, etc., because you may tip into ineligibility and you may choose a different project. So that's something we would talk at the outset.
We have a raised hand from Charles, if Charles wants to go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that. Just kind of curious, when you make your web series and you've completed, what's the follow-up behind it, and what's your guys' overall vision to for the participants in this?
If you come through this program and apply to us and get our money, are you now, did you get our development money in your question, or are you still waiting?
Well, the thing is, I was kind of wondering about for the future development of their participants, like with the overall vision you want to achieve from this, and connecting a lot of the I guess we say a lot of the film directors and movie creators and things like that, because I know you're trying to promote a lot from the north, which I think is amazing. But what do you guys want to see from all that, like in the future, in the next few years?
Cool. Yeah, I can answer that on behalf of the IPF. So right now, our programs kind of act like a funnel. We get, like I said, 200 applications into our development fund. We fund roughly 30 a year for development. That's about $1 million, so $30,000 per project. About half of those, about a third of those to half of those will be funded by us for production. And so the goal with this program is that we tip you into the top of our funnel, and the outcome then becomes my entire program outcome, which is there's value in learning and applying for sure. And often people, the first time they apply, they don't receive our money, but they learned a ton. And so then, don't be discouraged, etc. Keep going. If you do get our money, then you're one of 30 or so in a year that's in our cohort. And there's a bunch of stuff we do there. We do some training, we do sustainable production training. There's pieces, even if you don't get our production funding, there's some other value. You also are being paid as a writer. So that's an outcome of ours we care about. We want you to be a writer and work on your craft. We want you to expand your network and hire other writers to work on your idea, and have a senior script editor or development executive or both attached to your project at a heavily discounted rate, but they're doing it because they know you and they're interested in working with you and they're interested in supporting you and your vision. That connection you make and the development work that happens around your concept, also very valuable and is an outcome we care about. When you get to hopefully production, like I said, about a third to a half will be funded for us for production. Those ones hopefully go on. You need a couple more pieces of financing typically, but once you have our vote of confidence, you're in a good position to complete financing and actually get to production. Our production, by the way, is a maximum of $200,000 towards production of your short series. Our ultimate goal is we want to get those made, we want you to make your series, and we want it to be shown to an audience and to the world, and share those ideas. We are technically an equity investor, but and we will remain so. We're self-funded, but the outcome we know are often not commercial with these first series. And so our board is very aligned on what the outcome of our programs are, which is career advancement. We hope that this gives you the experience and have managed a budget now and produce something so that you get to your next project and you've learned a ton and you've got some more trust. You've got another rung on your ladder of your resume, and you go on and make another series or do something else building on top of that. We also want that IP. We believe we've developed and invested in that IP. That IP may go on either out of development, the end of development phase, or out of the end of the first season of production, and it can go on to long form. That concept, we believe, is also valuable. That's been developed through our program. And so we're hoping either the outcome of our programs, the careers of people that come through to advance, and the IP hopefully also advances. Those are not guarantees. We take a ton of risk at the beginning because we believe in the process also has a ton of value. I hope that answered your question, Charles.
You can go again,
All right.
Charles.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, because I just got back from the Screenwriters Festival in London, England in April, and there was somebody I was thinking about collaborating with over there as well too. So we're just funding, if I apply and do get it, would that work with the funding that the other person might get from over there? Could we combine the two?
Two things I'll tell you. It sounds like you're talking about CoPro. So if you have another source of funding that's outside of Canada, yes, it can apply. It's a cautionary tale. We've seen a handful of these smaller budget series, and they sometimes will come with funding from outside of Canada. It's possible that it will work, and it's not ineligible to us. I'll explain some of our requirements, but often those small budgets, when you have sort of two different funding sources that are outside of Canada, they're out of sync with each other, and it becomes a little bit like sometimes it falls apart because the two different timing paths don't work, and two different partners in two different countries. So it's not that you're ineligible, it's more that I've seen it's approved. When it is approved, it somehow the timing falls apart somehow in the project. I don't think I've seen a CoPro on a web series. On the bigger budget TV shows, they seem to be able to absorb all the administrative back and forth that's required to capture the funding, but it's not a no. Secondly, inside our program, the money that we give you, just in case it's not a CoPro, the money that we give you, 75% of it needs to be spent in Canada, but 25% of it could be spent elsewhere, which means if your person was coming in and you wanted to actually bring them on your team as a writer, as long as they fit underneath the 25% threshold, you can actually hire people from outside of Canada. We've seen American writers attached, etc., from Australia. So, and those are almost pluses when you fit it in the budget correctly, because we know the project now has a presence and potential distribution opportunity outside of Canada. But just be careful when you're going cross-border. It does make the paperwork more complicated. You got to really pay attention to the budget thresholds. And I'm describing the IPF's piece. If you're seeking funding elsewhere, like to add to your financing plan, pay very close attention to what their rules are. They may be different than ours. They might have a different threshold for Canadian versus international expenditure, et cetera, or limitations.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Just one more.
No, not all. Good questions. Smart questions.
This project I have it's an animation called Interstellar Journey. I pretty much own everything for it, but I have an animator here that just graduated, like, I don't know, half a year ago. So I was thinking about hiring him to get that, and the person from outside would be like a producer that comes in and helps kind of fund it for over here in Canada, because the pound goes a lot further in Canada than it does obviously anywhere else, right? So
yeah. What I would suggest, you could go through, you could plan to bring that project into this training program if you want, which is really just about all the pieces that you're developing to apply. In that process, we can talk through that complexity. We can, some of the sessions that Brendon outlined might even apply to some of the very specific questions. And we can even, the IPF team could take a sidebar with you and have a conversation if that's the project that you think and the structure you want to follow to apply to us. And we can hopefully get into the weeds a little bit and hopefully answer the questions so that there's no missteps. But probably some of the challenges you're going to face might even be addressed in the training, so it could be valuable.
So Charles, just to be clear, so you have an animator potentially. You're looking for a producer from the UK, but so what role would you be? Would you be sort of taking like a producer, writer, director, or a couple of those, or one of those? What's your role ideally?
I was going to take them all. I am the writer because I was going to I graduated as a screenwriter, and it just happened to be in the Yukon, right? So I was supposed to be in Toronto, but because of COVID, I'm now here, and I'm pretty happy here as well too. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good emerging talent here. Making that kind of said as well, everybody has their own projects that they kind of want to work on. But they're all interconnected, which is really nice to see. I just got in basically filmmaking probably about 3 years ago. I didn't know really anybody, but I just happened to go to the program, graduate from it, and well, now this is going to be my new career path, I guess you'd say. So thinking about all the IPs that I created there, I was like, well, a lot of the IP I kind of want to hold on to myself, except for a couple. I don't mind selling, but a lot of the IP was like, well, that kind of makes sense. But for the production, I wanted to, stay on as a writer and eventually kind of pass it off to somebody as a, producer. And for the animator, like I said, he's been trying to promote himself for the last little while. He just happened to stay in the same apartment building that I was in. So I'm like, oh, I have a series, but I need the characters created. So I've been paying him to help flesh out the characters and what they look like. But like I said, okay, I have the pilot script that I want to put out there, but then I have the ideas of like how the series is going to go. But to do a 20-minute series would be nice just to see if it's feasible for, something bigger later on.
Okay, thank you for that. The reason why I ask is so the intention behind the pre-application program would be you'd be putting on your producer hat to apply to this, to sort of learn all about what you need to do to put it together a successful application. So it sounds like you might be wearing a few different hats, but the focus of this particular program, you'd be putting on your producer hat.
Yep, which is kind of like where I want to be. I also have another person from Yukon that I've been working with. I'm hoping to get him as a producer because he's got that capability to be a pretty good leader. So I'm hoping to drag him on as well too with this project.
Okay, so I'll reiterate. So we're taking one person for like one member of your team would be going through the actual training, right? So you need to. I just recommend that you think about whether that person would be yourself in this case, that you want to take the training through the pre-application program, or if you are thinking of bringing on a Yukon-based producer, whether that person would perhaps benefit more. It really depends on who's going to be submitting, like doing the bulk of the work to put the application together. So just a couple things to think about.
Yeah, because I was hoping that I was going to be able to participate, but then did he put in an application as well?
Well, I don't.
For like a different project?
I'm not trying to confuse things. I'm just saying you need to think about the structure of your team a little bit. And like, and again, it's really going to come down to who's going to put the application together. It sounds like to me right now, it's probably most likely coming from you, and you might maybe be adding another Yukon-based producer if you were to get, into the IPF program itself and receive production funding and go ahead and make the project. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of food for thought there in terms of just focusing on this initial program, the pre-application program.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, do we have any other questions?
We haven't had any others come through at the moment, but if anybody else wants to raise their hand and say anything, now's your time.
Okay, well, maybe while you guys sort of think about any final questions, I'll just run through the timeline again so that everyone has that sort of clear. So the call for submissions is open now. The deadline for submissions, as I mentioned, is end of the day, July 15th. We'll take the next 2 weeks after that to evaluate the submissions, and then we'll be announcing participants for the program on August the 6th. The first online session takes place on September 3rd. That goes all the way till the final session on November the 26th. In there, as I said, we'll be sort of starting on your homework, which is essentially working on the materials that you'll need to submit. You'll have some time, of course, like through December, January, etc., to further refine your application. I'm not going anywhere during that time. So for instance, if there's something that you'd like to, even though the online sessions will be over, I'm still available to bounce ideas off of, or if you need me to sort of read a particular piece of the application that you'd like a little bit of feedback on, I'm around. And then, of course, the final deadline for the IPF short form series development program is March the 1st, unless I've got that wrong, John.
You are correct. Yeah.
All right.
It's the first week of March. If March, I didn't look, but if March 1st was a Saturday, it's going to end up being the Monday or the Tuesday. That's all.
That's right.
Can I add one thing, Brendon, on behalf of Nunavut Film, that if there are applicants who'd like to seek our advice and input as they prepare to apply by the deadline of July the 15th, then myself and my colleague Maral would be more than happy to give any feedback or any help that we can.
Well, thank you, Hugh. I'm sure that's
awesome, Hugh. Yep.
Yeah, and I imagine that the other agencies feel the same way as well. So
yeah, thank you. I was just actually going to ride Hugh's coattails and echo the same for the Northwest Territories. Nancy and I will be happy to help.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, the overall
absolutely same for the Yukon as well. Feel free to reach out to me directly with any inquiries to the IPF. We're currently going through some staffing changes. So yeah, any questions about this program for the Yukon can come to me directly at Yukon Media Development.
Thank you, Neil. As everyone can see, there's obviously a number of different partners involved in this program, and the overall intention is really to provide everyone with a great deal of support. I think this is a fantastic initiative. I'm happy to be working on this, and I think it's going to be a great program. And just, you know, I think just some great support right across the Pan-Northern Territories there, and from the IPF, and with the Whistler Film Festival kicking in to help out as well. So some great support for you guys up there in the north right now. It should be a great program. Okay, it is about 1:45, so just kind of check and see if there's any final questions or comments. We will be running the session again a little bit later in the month in case, and of course there'll also be a recording of this if you'd like to rewatch it. And then if anyone has any further questions after the fact, you can reach me at industry@whistlerfilmfestival.com if you've got a further question. Looks like another question has just popped up on the chat. If working on other film productions during the program, is it okay to miss some online sessions? Okay, that's a great question, actually, because we will be, with the permission of each speaker, because of course the speakers will be sharing some of their own IP, but the intention is to record all of the sessions and then send out a Zoom link afterwards, so you've got that as a resource. And then if, for instance, something comes up, like you're working on a show or you have a personal matter, we don't expect you to, 100% attend absolutely everything, regardless of everything else going on in your life. So the intention is to record the session so you can view the Zoom link afterwards and catch up. But ideally, you'll attend as much as possible. We really, the intention here is this is all about you guys as opposed to about us so much. So we want to make sure that the people that are applying to get into the program really buy in and really, show their enthusiasm by being able to make as many of the sessions. The speakers, of course, are sort of lending their time to this. So we want to get as much buy-in as we possibly can. So think about that in regards to your own personal sort of schedules when applying. But yes, technically, we will have a a link to the recording that we'll send out at the end of every session so that anyone who misses can catch up. Good question.
And the same goes for this Q&A. It'll be up on our YouTube. So if there's anything that you didn't get the chance to write down or you've forgotten or anything, you can check out our YouTube page in the next couple days and review everything.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we got. So I want to thank John at the IPF and of course all of our representatives from the northern agencies and everyone for joining us today. As I mentioned, you can always email me with any follow-up questions, and the Zoom link will be available shortly. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. We look forward to your application.